Jonathan, thank you for joining today. And we've been friends for a while now, and we met through the John Kabat-Zinn Facebook group.
Yeah.
Of which you were such a vocal and active member that we asked you, well, why don't you come, since you're on there a lot and you're posting and commenting, be part of the team. And so you graciously offered to help, and since then you've been basically heading up all the day-to-day on the site. And that friendship led to us talking a lot about mindfulness, and in that time we've shared bits with each other, and you've since completed like the MBSR course, and you've done a lot of your own stuff as well, where you've had time to spend with John on like Zoom meetings and stuff that he was organizing and stuff.
Yeah.
So thanks for doing this. But yeah, why don't you give like a little bit about, just very high level, about you, and then how your interest in mindfulness, and then we can jump in a little bit about I think today's theme is, I'm going to label it, what we love about Tolle, or what we loved about The Power of Now, because it's more of like a celebration of like some of the amazing things from that book.
Absolutely. Well, thanks a lot, Guy. And I just, first of all, I got to tell you, it's as always an honor and a joy to be able to just speak with you. We've had some talks over the past year plus, and it's been amazing. And you introducing me to this book has really, as you know, helped me deepen my practice. So it's been an awesome journey. And as you know, I'm really new to the practice, less than a couple of years in, actually. So I am a beginner. And basically where I came into all of this was, I was on an ongoing journey and battle to kind of attempt to free myself from suffering, from chronic anxiety, chronic pain, what they labeled as PTSD, fibromyalgia, had a couple failed back surgeries, and later on in life, some tragedies, such as my mother dying from a bullet to the head, and went through several years of kind of traumatic stuff. And growing up, it was kind of tough from the get-go, and moved around a lot of times, state to state, city to city, always the new kid in school growing up. And I was already running on autopilot from day one. And back then and growing up, I just always tried to find my own safe place, because there was no permanence anywhere. And that ended up being through music and guitar mainly. So that was my safe place, but I was never really taught how to be. And I grew up hearing things like be still and knowing all this stuff, but no one really taught me how to be still. And so basically a couple years back, I was going through some relaxation videos and things like that, like I was always doing, to try to calm myself down, because my doctor had told me that, well, your amygdala has been kind of running on full throttle from day one, and that's why none of your medications are working. So it was really tough. I was actually watching some documentary one day about these monks that were getting these boards bashed over their heads, and they were claiming not to feel the pain. And I thought, what are they doing? And they put them in some fMRI scans and things like this. And I was so fascinated. So I was doing some searches online, and I didn't find anything on that, but I actually ran across John Kabat-Zinn's work, and I clicked with it instantly. And I started practicing, and next thing I knew, I was reading books for the first time, and a lot of things were just unfolding at just a rapid rate. And all the books I was reading, of course, were written by John Kabat-Zinn. I just had to get more and more into it. And So it really,
Just very quickly, Jonathan, for those that don't know, John Kabat-Zinn is actually the modern day, or the father of modern day mindfulness. So when you hear about someone talking about a mindfulness-based stress reduction course, or MBSR, as it's known in the field, you're referring to John's work, his research, all the way back from the 70s. And it literally is the pillar, it's the cornerstone for all the science-based mindfulness courses that exist today. And so, as far as pushing this whole thing forward in society and, making it available to the masses, he really was a massive pioneer in that. And that's the group that we're talking about, the Facebook group that we're with the admin team for. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And as far as the Facebook and all of that goes, I spoke with John briefly one day and I said, how can I share this MBSR on the dark, world of Facebook where there's so much this and that going on without, trying to come out like a salesman or something, because it really helped me. How do I share that? And he just said, he said a lot of things, but he said, let your life and your work be unified, and ask yourself, how will that appear? Those words really changed my life. And the page has been a wonderful place for us all to kind of gather and connect and share experiences and teachings of that work. So,
what did he say? Say it again.
He said, let your life and your work be unified, and ask yourself, how would that appear?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something on the adage of like
it resonate with you forever, and one day it's like, oh, now I understand what he meant.
Yeah, very much so. And I think the idea of the love what you do and you never have to work a day in your life as well, something along those lines. But it's it's fascinating to see that from that a couple of years that you've been into mindfulness and the change and the progress. And so for me, as we were having our conversations, I could hear your progress throughout, because for those that are not familiar with what mindfulness is, a lot of the mindfulness courses is about paying attention in the present moment, deliberately, something on those lines. But the idea being that you're having thoughts nonstop throughout the day. And for the majority of our lives, it happens unconsciously. So you wake up and there it goes. It starts triggering off thought after thought. And then the idea of the mindfulness practice is that you're aware of it and you're observing it. And so by being the observer of it, you then have the power to say, okay, well, in that moment that the thought arises, I can't stop the thought from arising, but when it does, okay, I can see it, so I can do something about it. I can apply the remediation. Now that could be switching that negative thought or that thought out for another positive thought, or I want to think about, working on this move at badminton or this move that I'm trying out in pool. Or it could be what we're talking about with Eckhart Tolle stuff, is that you bring yourself back to the present moment, back to the breath, or back to your senses, or back to the movie you're watching, or back to the conversation. But it's the idea of like, okay, I'm not being the zombie physical body, and my consciousness and my reality is elsewhere. I'm now I'm grounding myself back into the present moment.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
And so what I tend to do with a lot of my students is, when I notice that they get some of the early bits now, okay, so they're in the meditations and when they're helping to share an insight, what's going on in their mind, when they start developing that wax on, wax off, the Karate Kid style of like, okay, I've noticed a thought, I'm bringing it back to my breath. I've noticed another thought now, I'm bringing it back to my breath. And then once they get to that bit, what naturally happens is they'll start applying it a bit during the day. Like, I wasn't looking forward to the call with my boss, but I thought, hey, let me not focus on that now. Let me do this instead. So they've learned how to like use that fork in the road, And then when they start applying it into the day, then I say, hey guys, check this guy out. Because that's like getting like a belt from me, like your first, like your like a first dan on your white belt or something. It's like, yeah, here you go. I've given you this now, and it's not me giving you this, but it's like I'm saying you're now ready for
Sure.
because this will make so much more sense, and it will help elevate you to that. It goes way beyond just relieving stress now. It goes way beyond you helping to get you off your meds, or it goes way beyond you dealing with some of the PTSD. This now explodes into a whole, wow, what is your reality like now? Who are you really?
Right.
Starting to explore, well, if I am not my thoughts, then who am I? Because thoughts is where I've spent most of my life, my identity and my ego. So if
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that, then what the bloody hell am I?
Right.
And then now you can start, and then it's through this. It's like one of those cheat books. It's got all these like little short codes in them
Mm-hmm.
to help you. Like, oh, now I get it. Yeah, if someone had explained it to me like that, in combination with the hours that I've spent on the mat or on the cushion, spending time in this laboratory of your own mind,
Yeah.
you really get a chance to like, oh, this makes so much sense. And it was like, it helps piece together some of the missing bits. And on top of that, the more you read it, the more it's like, oh yeah, it reaffirms, but it just means a little bit something different every time.
Yeah.
And the final thing I think I'll say on this before I hand it back over to you, mate, is that when you read this without having practiced meditation, it's still a great book, because I had read it like about 15 plus years ago. And my mate Eddie, shout out to Eddie, he recommended it to me, but it was great. Like, someone's giving you a bit of useful information, like saying, hey buddy, 3 times 3 is 9. Remember that. And you're like, oh wow, that's great. But after the mindfulness, it's like someone saying, this is why 3 times 3 is 9. So you can work out 4 times 4. It's like showing you how multiplication works, rather than just saying 3 times 3 is 9. Memorize that. So if someone asks you, but now it's like saying, here's the whole underlying matrix of the way that it all works. And yeah, and this was a massive, massive step for me in my path of learning about myself, who I truly am, and also learning about what thoughts really are and how they play a role in my life. So for you, let's go back to you, Jonathan, now. So a traumatic, experiences in your life, severe, traumatic experiences, right? Medication, back pain, etc., and a lot of anxiety. So enter mindfulness, got you reading. You got fascinated with this subject, because it wasn't just about, well, you can share it, but then all that progress, and then you start reading Tolle, and then that's when the conversations between me and you really started cranking up a notch. So let's go there.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh gosh, where to begin? Well,
so what was your thoughts when I said go read this book? So what was your pre-thoughts? Okay, I'm gonna read this book, and then
first off, kind of bouncing off of what you said, that really hit close to home. Basically, I had reached a point in my practice where, and I had told you, I said, Guy, I'm still having a little bit of a hard time understanding what the ego is exactly, and how I know I want to, now that I've been through these MBSR courses and different things, and been educated and gone through this point of practice, how do I consistently more get out of my own way? And, what am I? Who am I beyond name, beyond, I am a musician and I'm broken and I am this and I am that. And who am I underneath all of that, and underneath all that chatter going on? And this book really helped me to understand what the ego is exactly, the unobserved mind that can ultimately run your life if you allow it. So yes, absolutely. If it happens a trillion times a second, where you're caught up in thought, and just the ability to return, presence is absolute key in transformation and healing. And this book really does kind of give you the tools you need to really, what's already there, but how to access that, the power of now. And it has absolutely changed my life, deepened my practice, given me a better understanding of a lot of things. And Absolutely. It's helped me get off of my medications, all the anxiety medications, the opioid pain medications. Out here where I am, it seems like there's a big gap where people need to know a little bit more about what mindfulness is. And besides just the awareness, that arises while paying attention on purpose in the present moment, it's also about relationality, how you're in relationship to everything. So I think this book really helped me to pay closer attention and be, as Eckhart says, the watcher. Mm-hmm. And when you feel those strong emotions coming on, like my anxiety reached such a high point that the fibromyalgia got so bad. If I stressed so hard, sometimes I would feel these pressure points just stabbing pain in my body.
Yeah.
And how do I calm down? So all of this together, I could go on all day, but it absolutely has been a game changer for me. From day-to-day experiences to musical performances to everything.
Yeah. And the reason why the power of now is so significant is because whether we know it or not, we spend such little time here.
Yeah.
And if you took at your present day or your 24 hours and you looked at your waking hours, and of that time that you're awake, what percentage are you present and what percentage are you lost in thought? Mm-hmm. You'll be like, I'm present for most of it. No, all day long I'm present. Which is what the perception for most people. But what the actuality, the factuality of it, is that word, factuality. But the reality of it is that we spend most of our time thinking. Even when you're brushing your teeth, it's like, I got to do this and I got to do that. And you're in the shower and it's there and there. And then you're always either in the past or the future in some kind of daydream.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is fine if you had deliberately chosen that this is how I want to spend my time. I want to just be lost in thought.
Right.
Perfect. Okay, because you got choice. But if you don't notice that that's going on, that's an issue, because now you have no choice. Now you're at the beck and call of whatever thought wants to pop up. And we live our lives with one thought after the other, and we have to listen in. So for example, it's like I could just be going to have a shower, and it's like someone coming and stopping me in the street and talking to me, and I'm being polite, and I just like, okay, yeah, what have you got to say? He goes, yeah, and then it's like them giving you negative feedback about yourself, and you're listening, and you're saying, okay, all right, I'm going to stay here until you go on your own accord, and then as soon as I continue my journey, there's going to be someone else that comes in and say, hey, by the way, that thing tomorrow, you're going to do terrible, and it's like, and then what's going to happen? And then after that, your boss is not going to like you. Oh yeah, really? And then what? And then this goes on all day long.
Yes.
And then the first time I realized that was going all day long is when I sat down to meditate, because I'm like, okay, this is going to be easy. Oh yeah, but I need to go shopping later. And it's like, oh, I just realized I've already gone. Okay, so I come back again. It's like, then I realized that I'm gone, and it's almost, oh wow, I can't even stop it. It's relentless. It keeps coming. But then it's like, relax. That's perfectly normal. Okay. Mm-hmm. Everyone does that. We have on average 70,000 thoughts a day. So like, peace signs, everyone. This is perfectly normal. And you know what? They're going to be negative. And if you've had more trauma in your life, you know what? They're probably going to be a little bit worse. And if you've got a series of it in your family, genes going back generations, you know what? You might have a little bit more. Your baseline might be such. But there's this thing called mindfulness, and it's a tool that we speak of. And this tool, what it does, it takes you from being lost in these thoughts, and it brings you back to being present. All right, maybe back in your, like we were saying earlier, present to just you being in the room and noticing. It's like, oh, I'm here again. I'm not back in the meeting next week where I've been dreading. I'm back here again. Oh, okay. And as Eckhart Tolle says, when you look at in the moment everything right now, and say, what are my problems really right now, right here in this moment? And it's like, actually, there isn't really many problems. But the key thing being is that you've been lost all your life thinking that it's just you being you. not realizing that with this mindfulness meditation tool, you can bring yourself into the present moment where you're really yourself. And if we go back to that timer again of like of all your waking hours, we're spending like 90-something% lost in thought. Now, people do things like meditation, or some people go rock climbing, or they do running, or they do Muay Thai, or do they do some kind of a course? Because there I'm not in my mind. I'm just in the motion and I'm doing my thing, or I'm in the zone. And people find loads of things to do to escape. They need to do something that extreme in order to get a break from just being in your head. And afterwards, I feel great. But at some point, it comes back again. But what if you could do something about it on demand in your choosing? And what if all along you had the power at any moment when these thoughts come up to do something about it? And that's where the mindfulness and meditation comes in. So for those that haven't heard of this concept before, this is what we're trying to get at. It's like you are constantly thinking, and by realizing that you're thinking, you can do something about it. And when you cut your thought, like John Kabat-Zinn says, like just popping a soap bubble, you bring yourself back into the present moment, into the now. And the now is a place where we spend so little time that it's like, well, what is this? Let's explore this. And now this is the conversation about we're going beyond the ego, going beyond the comparison with other people, going on beyond the judgment, going beyond the past pain, going on beyond the past trauma. That we think, oh yeah, that's my label now, because that happened to me, that's my label. But you learn to, I am not my thoughts. So even the more you practice it, even the worst thought that you have, even the most extreme and what we would label black belt thoughts, even though they come with a punch and like when it comes, it's like, oh yeah, too late. I can feel it in the gut. You can feel that stench of it for a while, but you can still catch it and you can kind of like, yeah, you got me, but I got you back.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's like, yeah. But you should see the other guy. I may have like a bloody nose and a black eye from that thought, which has just literally paralyzed me in the bed. But it's like, when you have that trained tool and that method and that technique to, okay, back to the room, even though momentarily you've cut off that tap of these chemicals pouring into your body, that uppercut, that feeling, and it's like, okay, I've got the upper hand again, and I'm back to being present. Rather than without it, that comes and punches us, and it's like, oh yeah, but then I did that, and I'm worthless, and I'm no good, and this and that, and poor me, feel sorry for me, and then these guys think negative, people judging me and stuff. So you can go down that path which we're so used to doing, or right. As soon as that first punch comes, that ability, because I've trained and because I've done that wax off, wax off, wax on, wax off so many times on my formal practice, I'm no longer a stranger to it. And obviously the harder the punch, the more it's going to take for me to draw from. But we have that tool. And even if it doesn't work all day long, we can apply it in little bursts. And so if we were meant to spend we turn that around now, if we were meant to spend 90% of the day lost in thought and 20% was going to be really nasty, what if that 20% is now 10%? And being aware, I reduced it, is like snowballs. Okay, well then maybe if I practice more and I do more hours on the cushion, then I can squeeze that even further. Then I start applying it more throughout my day. And it's like, now we're flipping it around where the majority of the day we're being present and the minority is when we're lost in thought. But it's just understanding, wow, A, there is a present moment, and B, we have the tool to access it. And again, it's the ability to keep practicing and practicing, to spend more time in this place that we're calling the power of now. And again, before I hand it back over to you, Jonathan, it's like that's the fundamental thing about the whole thing, is we have choice. But not only do we have choice for to split into two lanes, but it's like, it's teaching us who you really are beyond all your doubts and your frustrations and your limitations as to what you think you are, this ego that you form for yourself. The liberation is like, wow, literally everything, you can apply it to everything, and everything is just much better and more liberating in that moment.
Absolutely. So beautiful and so true, Guy. Thank you. Yes. The true liberation is in the now and all of its isness, and the future, it's not here, the past is gone, and to sit and the ego is constantly trying to grab onto things and to be the best at this, whether it's the best achiever or the best victim or any of that. And
exactly,
you know,
yeah,
we all get caught up in thought, like you said, but we all do have
all the
the
time,
ability.
mate.
It's
All the
all
time.
right here. And it's like not too long ago, I remember opening the curtains in the morning and seeing the rain. And normally I would be like, this is awful, awful weather. This is going to be a terrible day with this weather and all of this. And, you know, for the first time, I saw the rain dancing off of the leaves and grass, and all the pain, all the suffering, all the anxiety, all the fear, it's all connected to thought. And when you learn how to gently step away from thought and just be in the now, and it's not about drifting off into some dream bubble world and closing everything off. That was something that I ran into early in my practice. And I spoke with you one day and I said, oh, I think I'm doing great. All this stuff's happening and it's wow. And you said, how many thoughts do you think you have in a minute? And I said, well, you know, sometimes I just don't have any. And you said, I tell you what, why don't you record yourself, and every time you have a thought, raise your hand.
Yeah, right.
And I thought, well, I trust you. It sounds a little silly. I'm kidding.
It does. Yeah.
I'm joking. Let me try it. And I lasted about 10 seconds and I was doing this and this and that. And I was like, wow. And we really do get in that. And early on, I just kind of found myself sort of using strictly music and zoning out and getting into some kind of dream world. And that's really not what it's about. It's about being present, and the resistance that's what leads to suffering, you know, resistance to the now. And until we really understand that and really practice and get a better understanding about how we are in relationship to everything, you know, like John Kabat-Zinn says, the good, bad, and the ugly. And the way Eckhart kind of goes about with those different reminders throughout the whole book, and different ways of, whoa. But we also reach a point too, you know, where we can get caught up in the awe moment, and, you know, we think, oh, I've got it now. I'm so mindful, and I'm gonna get out there and help this, do that, and do that, and you know, sometimes things unfold at a really rapid rate where it feels like some sort of sense of time travel or something almost. And we have to recognize that too. Are we striving? Are we getting caught up in the ego of, you know, I'm mindful? So really it's all about the heart. And I thought I loved myself my whole life, but I found out that I really didn't, until I learned the power of now and about self-compassion, and about, we have to really love ourselves before we can really be present in life, and to really help others. You know, have to get out of our own way. And how do we do that? And this book I would definitely recommend it to anyone who wants to understand that. Who am I beneath all of these concepts that I've gathered since birth?
And who I've believed is my real reality for all my life. And that's why I'm so offended when someone says something, or I take something so personal, because I'm attaching so much of my identity with that. But you know, as we're on the book, I kind of like wanted to read out a section. And I love it how this book is full of these symbols here. I don't know if you can see them here, but he prefaces the book by saying, all right, the symbols. So it's a suggestion that you may want to stop reading, feel and experience the truth of what has been said. I mean, he's so deep. I said, I'd love to write a book one day where I just stop doing these. I say, hey guys, take back, digest this gem of this beauty of a gem. I just sit back and, sip on that for a little bit before you move on. You know what I mean?
Right.
And this little chapter here, all problems are illusions of the mind. And what I love about this book is that a lot of these sections are framed in questions. It's like there's someone that's like, yeah, totally, I love your work, but still I still don't get this. I see what you're saying here, but this. And he's like, yeah, very good, da, da, da. And he just like comes back and just like, yeah, well, obviously, so all problems are illusions of the mind. So question, it feels as if a heavy burden has been lifted, a sense of lightness. I feel clear. But my problems are still waiting for me, aren't they? Right, they haven't been solved. So isn't this just, am I not just temporarily evading them? Right, so fair point, right? So you're sitting down on the cushion, you have a traumatic, you PTSD something. So take a break, you breath, but it's still there after it, right? Okay, so Tolle says, so if you found yourself in paradise, it wouldn't be long before your mind would say, yes, but da 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 da. Right, you still got this, da da da. So even in paradise, your mind's going to take you there.
Yeah.
Right. So ultimately, this is not about solving your problems. Okay, because and that's key. It's about realizing that there are no problems, but only situations to be dealt with now or to be left alone and accepted as part of the isness of the present moment until they change or they can be dealt with. But problems are mind made and need time to survive. They cannot survive in the actuality of now. Problems don't exist in the now. Focus your attention on the now and tell me what problem you have in this moment. And that's very profound because,
yes,
there's so many things like, Bitcoin crashes and it's like, Bitcoin, da, 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 da. There's the event itself, right, that we have no control over, or you break your leg, or your wife cheats on you, or there's something, right? You can't do anything about that, right? That they call that like, and your first instinct, like that's the first arrow. But the thought that follows thereafter, that's where you come in and you play.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, so fool me once, shame on you. That first one, okay. Like, if something bad happens in my life, out of my control.
Yeah.
But then when I let the second arrow or the next thought that follows it, that results from it, that's on me now. Whether I like it or not, that really is on me. And the beauty of this that shows you, like once you break your arm, do you just then, oh yeah, this is a great time for me to chill and play computer games and just like laze out and do whatever? Or is it, oh my God, I can't do this. And then, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to play the piano and I'm not going to get my gig, so I can't get no money. And it's like, it's about perception, right? And when you realize that you have more control, it's like you can just see it, just that pattern, that da, 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 da. And it's like you just cut it and say, okay, there. But there's also this positive, amazing stuff, right? So what I loved about it as well is I kind of almost see it in two ways. That when you notice that you're thinking, it's the remediation and what can I do about it? For me, usually branches into two things. It's like I can either be in the present moment where I say, okay, all I'm going to do is focus on my breath, or I'm going to focus on the sense of the air going through my nose, because I know that the minute that I move to sensation, I'm pulling myself into the present moment and away from thinking.
Yeah.
And that's what I do in my formal practice. But sometimes it's like I'm watching a movie on Netflix. I'm like, shit, I should be doing something else. I should be working right now. It's like, catch it. No, if I'm going to watch this movie, why suffer whilst watching the movie? It's like, no, back to the movie. Okay, cool. Yeah, I know, but what happens? Nope, back to the movie. And then when you can do that, it's like, wow, I can bring myself back to the movie. And so you start enjoying movies more. You start enjoying conversations more because you could be with a friend. It's like, oh, shit, I better go home. I've got work early tomorrow. It's like, oh, when's he going to stop talking? Or it's like, no, I can be with my friend and we can talk. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, tell me a bit more about that. But we get, but that's the beauty of it. It's like you can turn everything in the way that you want it because, there is neither good or bad, but thinking makes it so. If you think it's bad, yeah, it's going to be bad. But if you think it's good, then it's going to be good as well. And an important lesson from Viktor Frankl, in his, Man's Search for Meaning, when he's in prison in Auschwitz. And he's, one of the comments he made just by surviving it and having seen people react is like, people could survive the toughest conditions because of hope. But then when someone got a letter that their loved one had passed away or that they never made it or they got caught or something, he was surprised at how quickly that person would just wither away and then die. But those that had that hope that maybe my family or my kids have survived and they make it, that's what's going to drive me to think. But if you think that there's no hope, like again in the power of the mind, that if you're feeling negative, you can just pump yourself with those negative chemicals when you really need your immune system to be firing high because you're malnourished and you're probably whatever colds and flus and stuff that's going around, and you need to be strength. And then he made that point about two men looking out beyond the prison bars. And he's like, one sees the bars and the other is seeing the stars behind it. It's like it's perception, even though you're in these conditions. But and that's how we learn it. Unless you have that skill to say, I have choice. That is the beauty about it. It's the choice that we never knew we had all along.
Yeah. Yes.
If you choose to suffer, okay, cool. But at least you should be taught that there is choice. And I think that's why this is so beautiful, because it gives you the power of choice. And if you have choice, then you can do something about it. And yes, the more traumatic and the more the scarier the thought, the more you're going to need to practice. But it's like everything. So I say I want to do MMA and go up there and have 2 fights and do a week of training and think you're going to do well. No, the harder your competition, the more you're going to practice, the more hours you're going to need to put in, the more of everything you're going to need to do so that you can fight the best. And if you've got really troubling thoughts and thoughts that have traditionally caused you much pain and suffering and thought that and have defined you, the more practice and the more hours on the cushion and the more like the jabs and the more the wax on the wax off that you're going to have to do, and the more competition you're going to have to face, and the belts that you're going to have to get throughout the years and your progress, so that you can get to that level. Do you know what I mean? So it's
absolutely. And shit can and absolutely will hit the fan. And about how we're going to be in relationship to that when it does happen. And it does take a lot of suffering sometimes to get to the gold, so to speak. And I like how Eckhart mentions that, some people reach a point of they've had just so much suffering that just something may spark inside and they say, okay, I've had enough. Or maybe they've achieved everything and just have all this stuff and success and money, but they're miserable because they're still lacking something. Either or, it's the same sort of thing. And like how it also says, you've got 2 options. You can say yes to what is, or accept what isn't. There's not really any in between. So we have to accept that all things are impermanent as well. That's really massive. And whether you have a loss or whatever you're going through, it just is. And I like how he says, all things which make you happy, the ego clings to, and then that situation comes to an end, doesn't know what to do without a resistance. And I like how he speaks about limited situation, your limits. And you have to know too that you're not limited by your limitations, and you're not your pain, you're not your anxiety, you're not your fear, you're not your thoughts. And just start with the breath. If you're new to it, you know, everyone has their own ignorance about your own experience. And whether you've been through hell and back 5 times or not, you have the ability to heal yourself. It's already here. So yeah, you could go through this book. I've already gone through it a couple of times, and I just keep coming back to it.
I've done it many, many times, you know. Like, and if you guys have never heard it before, try the audio book, because you hear Tolle, he actually narrates the whole thing. So highly recommended.
Absolutely, absolutely. I remember back when my doctors, all of them, told me, we've done everything we can. You're going to have to just find a way to deal with it. Here's a bunch of medications, and oh, go to cognitive therapy. And then the cognitive therapist, you know, says, just think happy thoughts. And, you know, that's nice, but we need to examine what's here. You know, what's behind this thought? What kind of emotion is clung onto it? And what type of physical sensation? Where am I feeling this in the body? So we need to be able to gently and like you said, you know, start with the basics and work our way up to really see what's here and uncover the mask and all of those concepts, and really discover who we really are, which only we can do that. And it's all right here, right now.
Exactly. And even, you know, just to set some context for this book as well is,
you
know, Eckhart came from a place of a lot of pain and suffering himself, you know, and he was at a point in his life where he was very depressed and, you know, and suffering in the, you know, terribly. And, you know, one of his famous, you know, revelations, you know, the Newton apple on the head kind of moment, was when he was so frustrated one day, and he was like, I can't live with myself anymore. And then, you know, then that immediately begged the question, well, who is the I that cannot live with the self, right? So who is the I and who is the self? Does that mean there's two? And if there's two, you know, which one am I of the two? And so it's from that initial question that this whole kind of learning came from. And then then it was brilliant what he did. And, you know, that's when we talk about the mindful aspects in Buddhism, you can see how like it holds true everywhere, because we're just observing thoughts. But what happens when we say to that thought, no to that thought, and no to that thought, and no, like my idea of, you know, being the bouncer in the nightclub. It's like, yeah, you're going to have queues of people trying to get in, you know, loads of thoughts, they're going to try and come in. You can't stop them from coming to the door. But when they get there, you have to be the bouncer. You have to like strengthen yourself. You need to learn how to, you know, talk the talk, to de-escalate, you know, yeah, I'm going to de-escalate. You're a big, scary thought. Okay, I understand. But tonight we're full. You have to move on. And I'm going to be nice about it. You know what I mean? So I'm going to now treat, whereas before I'll come with fear, and it's like, you know, F off. And now it's like, but you learn, it's like, okay, with kindness. No.
Yes.
I knew you were going to come today, and I know there's going to be many more of you, but I'm going to deal with you in kindness, and I'm just going to kindly ask you to leave. It's going to be frightening when you approach me, but if you don't have those skills, it's going to be overwhelming, and you might have the best intentions, but they're going to come into the club.
Yeah.
And so it's learning to be the, you know, you decide who's spending time up there. Because going back to this idea of me versus the self, it's like, am I the fear, or am I the one observing the fear? Or when you're tired, am I really tired, or am I just the one witnessing the tired?
Yeah.
And when I'm happy, am I just witnessing the happy, or am I the happiness? So it's like, the more you ask the question, it's like, okay, well, am I the thought? Well, what if I can just stop the thought? Because I think, oh, when I come to my end of the meditation, it's like, oh, when's the alarm clock going to go? I've got so much to do. I don't have time to meditate today. So, no, go back to the meditation. It's like,
Yes.
I know, but I got so much to do. No, back to the meditation. Oh,
Right.
what about that? What about that scary presentation you've got tomorrow? No, back to the meditation.
Mhm.
And
And that
then,
part of
yeah,
not beating yourself up as well, excuse me.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, of not saying I'm a horrible meditator, you know, whether you're beginner or wherever you are in your
yeah,
practice, you
yeah,
know, just be gentle and kind to yourself as well. Yes.
yeah. What I love about mindfulness is, for me, and especially John Kabat-Zinn's approach, is the science-based, backing to it. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, if you don't believe it, close your eyes, mate, and you try it yourself, right? And that's a big part of it.
Mhm.
But what Tolle, the angle that he comes from a God-fearing perspective. He comes from a Christian perspective, right? And he often talks about God and he references, but he does have his little, when they're talking about certain things in the Bible, he translates it into being in the now. And the idea that when we are being present, there's something very divine, like kind of, in contact with something very spiritual and godly in those moments when we are present.
Yeah.
And being, a God-fearing man yourself, what was your take on that? And yeah, and I'll have a follow-up question for that. But did you find that comforting? Did you like that aspect of it, or
Absolutely.
did it?
Absolutely. And to be honest, I'm not a God-fearing man anymore. I have a better understanding, I think, now of what God is. And
Mm,
I grew up in a very religious family and kind of drug to church every Sunday. Nothing against church, and there's some
mm,
great churches out there, but I learned a lot of things a little bit backwards,
mm,
all guilt based, you're going to go to hell if, and all of these things, and all of the ways that people misconceive what, you know people have perceptions, and I like how Eckhart's his view of God, and his openness of, when you really tap into all of this, the the level of connection and clarity and stillness and the realization of interconnectedness is so profound that that's God. God is much greater than we will ever be able to put in our minds, how we, or the ego wants to create, God is this man that does this, and, this is the way it is.
and that paradise and heaven is something that you get later. That it's not in the now. It's something. Oh,
Yeah,
dude. But when you die, whether it be hit by a car next week or whether you live to 100 years old, that's when you get the good stuff. That's when
yeah,
it's paradise. That's when it's, you're with God. And so this is just like, it makes you feel like this is second best. And this is like a holding, we're in a holding pattern until we get to paradise. Because by definition, it's way better than this, right?
yeah,
But it kind of like deceives you from the fact that what if this is paradise? And you only need to look at just like everything amazing about this planet. And it's like, well, if I had to describe paradise, this is pretty up there. You know what I mean? With the waterfalls and the rainbows and nature and the animals and the circle of life and sex and friendship and podcasts and this and that and the universe and the stars and space travel and Hawaii. And it's like, baguettes and cigarettes and mushrooms and psychedelics. It's like, this is, you'd have to be a genius for you. So if you think that Game of Thrones is impressive, what about all this stuff in our world and since time began? This is amazing. This is paradise. So it's learning
yeah,
to stop and think, well, what if this is the heaven? This is the paradise.
Mm-hmm.
And with the mindfulness and that, it really helps you tap into like, okay, yeah, but maybe the thoughts and all that is what is clouding the vision of actually being able to appreciate um, the fact that we may be in this place that we're calling paradise now, in this divine state. And that's why when people talk about this sense of being connected to everyone when they are meditating, because they're not, oh, I am this, and I compare myself to this, and I live here, and my name is this, and I'm a male, and I'm blah, blah, blah. Like when all that goes away and there's just presence, it's like, it goes beyond the skin, the body, and it goes beyond the physical. And it's just like, okay, now I'm starting to tap into this, there's something that goes beyond the self-constructed ego.
Yes, absolutely. And pure consciousness, pure awareness, when you even just have a glimpse of that, that really is a true slice of heaven.
Yeah.
It really is. It really is a true taste of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the realization of aiming and sustaining, and that shift really does happen. You talked about the scientific perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The shift in the brain, it actually does happen. They've proven over and over
Mm-hmm.
again. There's so many studies, and the thing that I love about mindfulness is that it's secular. That's what I liked about
Mm-hmm.
God and a lot of people, and being a Christian man, I really appreciated hearing Eckhart speak about God, and it opened my eyes
Mm-hmm.
a little more about what I was already sort of feeling. But it's wonderful, the mindfulness community, if you will. I've met so many people, through the 13-week retreat and everything else, all these communities that have emerged, and friends. I have friends now that are Muslim, Buddhist, whatever. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of doors into the same room, and it's all about presence. It's where all the gold is.
It's the common denominator between all of that. The religions. It's like I think they all meet in this place of presence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and being kind to yourself, and realizing that you don't have to get caught up in all this guilt, and just we're doing the best that we can, and that's important if you're really living with the heart and true compassion. Once you get a deeper understanding of who you really are beyond all of this stuff, you realize that there's a lot of things out there. You see when people are more reactive, when you become less reactive, and you feel deeper connections with people, whether it's passing on the street or whatever it is, or you're trying to comfort a friend, or you're being present with your daughters, or your wife, your husband, actually seeing them, and not through those foggy lenses of thought and judgment and labeling, all of that. When you meet someone and just see them and go, oh, this guy is that or this, or labeling things. Once you learn how to be present, you can really see things for what they really are. And there's a lot of beauty out there. We just can't see it until we clean off those lenses that are distorted by thought.
Yeah. And on that note, I think that's a great way to end the podcast. Yeah. And I would just add, it's when you're, especially when engaging with anyone, this isn't mine. It's like, it's the biggest respect you can pay someone to be present for them. Whether it's the guy you randomly meet on the street, or your neighbor, or someone at work, but it's when you're engaging with them, it's just to be fully present. And from that, you'll get presence back. But if you can remember that, the biggest respect you could pay someone, and the biggest love, and the biggest anything, it's not to be like, oh, what am I going to get out of this conversation? Or it's like, oh, I got to do this later. And it's like, no, be in the conversation and be present for that person. I mean, that is the best gift that you can give someone.
Right. And watch what happens then.
Exactly. So on that note, so this is the Mindful News podcast. You know, we're back on the regular production, and we're going to get these out, you know, in good timing. So thanks so much, Jonathan, for joining. And, you know,
thank you.
We can go on for hours when we're talking about the good stuff, you know.
Yes.
And this is the good stuff. So
yeah,
you know,
it is.
So like and support, show your support, and you know, we'll keep producing the podcast. So thank you, Jonathan, and you know, we'll want to have you back again very soon, so we can, you know, part 2. Maybe we do like a JKZ one. You know, when we go in the JKZ. All right then, my friend. You take care.
Such an honor. Thank you so much, Guy. Everyone be well.
No problem. All right, you take care. And I'm gonna we'll have a little debrief soon, my friend. All right, you take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Right.
See you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye bye.